The housewarming gathering was supposed to signal the start of a fresh phase in our lives, a joyful toast to the home we'd poured our hearts and efforts into building side by side. The living room buzzed with neighbors, colleagues, and close friends, all complimenting the layout, loving the way we'd styled it, and offering warm congratulations. I stood near the kitchen counter, sharing laughs with a small group of buddies, when I caught sight of my wife moving restlessly back and forth. She looked visibly disturbed by something. At first, I dismissed it, figuring the strain of playing host was getting to her. Yet the rigid way she walked, combined with those quick, cutting looks she directed at me, suggested a much heavier storm was gathering behind her flawless smile as the perfect entertainer. I stepped in to assist, suggesting I could carry out extra beverages to lighten her load. Rather than welcoming the gesture, she lashed out sharply, loud enough that the closest person halted their sentence. "Could you please avoid making me look bad this evening?" She muttered fiercely, barely above a whisper. Make her look bad? I hadn't uttered a single thing out of line. The remark cut deep, but I kept my composure, aiming to calm the tension. "I'm only offering to lend a hand," I answered softly. She rolled her eyes, her irritation climbing higher. At that point, I had no clue how tiny an ember could set off an explosion neither of us would be able to contain. Not long after, everyone had drifted into the main room. One of my work colleagues gave me a friendly elbow and teased that I'd officially entered the world of married property owners. I chuckled and threw back a playful response. My sentence barely landed before my wife charged toward me, fury flashing in her gaze. In an instant, without any sign, she swung her arm and struck me hard across the cheek, forceful enough to bring the entire space to a dead hush. All talking ceased. Drinks hovered motionless. A sharp intake of breath echoed somewhere, and there I remained, frozen in disbelief, my skin stinging, my dignity crushed before every person present. A ripple of stunned silence swept across the crowd. Nobody stirred. Nobody uttered a sound. She glared at me with pure rage, as though I'd committed some unforgivable act. In reality, all I'd done was chuckle at an innocent quip. Yet once the weight of her actions sank in, once she registered the stunned expressions, the disapproval and shock etched on the faces of our friends and coworkers, her bold front began to crumble. What ultimately shattered her, though, wasn't the reaction from those watching. It was my reaction. I didn't shout. I didn't push her back. I didn't even raise a hand to my cheek. I simply met her gaze, truly met it, with a steady, icy composure she'd never witnessed from me until then. In that heartbeat, a fundamental change took place within me. The person who consistently overlooked offenses, who dodged arguments, who always worked to preserve harmony, that version of me vanished. She recognized it immediately in my stare. Her fury dissolved. Her assurance evaporated. The blood drained from her cheeks, as if it were being absorbed into dry earth. "You aren't furious, are you?" she murmured, her tone fracturing. It wasn't dread of any retaliation on my part. It was terror that I might stop caring altogether. I gave no reply. Instead, I eased backward, opening a gap between us that struck her with the force of a shove. Her eyes grew wide, her breathing hitched. She gave a slow shake of her head, as though she could somehow reverse the irreversible. "Sweetheart, that wasn't my intention." Her words quivered, trailing off into nothing. The onlookers were at a loss, unsure where to direct their eyes. A few studied the carpet. Others traded awkward, silent looks. One or two began drifting toward the exit, uncertain if they should remain or act as though nothing had happened. My colleague started approaching, worry clear on his face, but I lifted a palm gently, signaling him to hold back. My wife tracked my every gesture, as though her entire existence hung in the balance. Her mouth opened, yet nothing emerged. With each passing second, the truth settled in. She had crossed an uncrossable boundary. I pivoted and walked down the corridor, desperate for a brief chance to draw air. From behind, the space filled with strained murmurs, restless movements, and muted bewilderment. Just before I reached the bedroom entrance, her voice reached me, fragile, wavering, pleading. "Don't go. Please don't leave me here." But I continued on, not out of spite, not to create drama, but simply because I required separation. I needed breathing room from the shame, the eroded faith, the blatant lack of respect she displayed in front of our entire circle. Moments later, She burst into the bedroom and shut the door with a slam. Mascara trailed down her cheeks in dark lines, tears streaming freely. "I'm truly sorry," she cried out, extending her arms toward me before freezing when she realized I hadn't budged. "I have no idea what came over me. That was wrong. I was just completely overloaded." She shook violently, all her poise stripped away, leaving only pure panic. Not panic about repercussions, but terror of losing what we had. She collapsed onto the floor, weeping, gripping the bed frame like it might anchor her. "I love you," she breathed between sobs. "I really do love you. Don't walk away from me. Don't abandon what we have." Her words cracked and faltered, each one tumbling out in raw urgency. I rested against the dresser, saying nothing, sifting through the hurt, the mortification, and the dawning understanding that our bond might have been fractured long before this night. When silence persisted, she inched nearer on her knees, tears still falling, apologies still pouring. "I know I shamed you publicly. I know I went too far. I know I destroyed the evening. But please, I beg you, don't end us over this." Her voice had shrunk to almost nothing. She stretched out toward my hand, and for the first time since the strike, I locked eyes with her directly. She recoiled, not from any threat I posed, but from the horror of possibly forfeiting the partner she'd assumed would always stay, no matter what. That evening, I offered her no assurances. I didn't grant immediate forgiveness. I didn't soothe her with gentle reassurances. Instead, I moved around her and pulled open the bedroom door, indicating the gathering had concluded for all. The guests departed without fanfare. She remained kneeling, face buried in her palms, fully aware of the wreckage she'd caused. Though I didn't walk out of the house that night, she understood just how near she'd come to losing me for good. All from a single strike she believed would assert her dominance, yet one that instead laid bare her greatest vulnerability.